Greetings friends, Reformed Stoic, back again with another video. So this one's a little bit off the cusp. I had an idea for a different video that I'll just go ahead and make tomorrow or some other time. That one's going to be, well, we'll just save that for another time. This is a little bit off the cusp. This is rethinking Loosh. So I had some decent success on my Gnostic video, and I saw that kind of brought some new people here, and it seems like it's bringing people here who are into this soul trap theory and the Loosh farm and whatnot. And it's very bizarre how this worked out for me, because I didn't make the connection that Robert Monroe is the person who actually, I believe, came up with this Loosh concept, or he's the one who coined the term Loosh. Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute and Hemi-sync, the Gateway tapes of Project Gateway, basically worked for the CIA, is the one who, in his out-of-body, you could say, astral traveling experiences, came across some sort of an entity. I think it was called like AA or BB or something. I haven't really read all of the books. I downloaded a couple tonight. I started reading some of them, and I'm like, you know what? Really, I just kind of want to start by getting into the Loosh stuff. So I listened to an audio segment from one of his books. I believe it was the second one. The chapter on Loosh farming. But I'm starting to go down this Robert Monroe rabbit hole, and the Gateway rabbit hole. I'm actually doing the Hemi-sync tapes, which I've mentioned on my stream. But yes, very interesting territory for a man of faith. I know that's something that would maybe kind of shock some people of faith in my community. And I'll just say that I am nearing the end of wave 2 of the Hemi-sync tapes. And so far, everything is fine. You know, once it gets to the point of attempting out-of-body experience, I'll take things very slow. But, I'm kind of just testing some uncharted waters here, and I want to cover a little bit of all of this stuff in this video. There's a lot to unpack here, but so I listened to one of the chapters on the Loosh farm. It was very convoluted, not especially enjoyable to listen to. I see that it's something that maybe would be difficult for people to interpret, and then really a lot of what I got was from reading the comment section. There's people suggesting that it's been misinterpreted to make it this hopeless predatory thing, and when you make it the hopeless predatory thing, it sounds a lot like Gnosticism. These entities, not only does it sound like Gnosticism, it sounds like ancient aliens. But it shows that a lot of these worldviews kind of boil down to the same thing, that we have been engineered so we can be parasited off by these spiritual entities, the Archons or the Dracos or whatever you want to call them. And what I find the most confusing, that's going to make this video difficult for me, maybe this is just going to be more of a kind of like a brainstorming, thinking video. Maybe it can incite some conversation in the comments. But what I find confusing is that some people are saying that love, unconditional love, also creates Loosh. And I don't really like that concept. I mean, it's not up to me But listening to the audiobook, I found it very like sterile and difficult to penetrate, very robotic. You know, he just said loosh like a million times. Like, you know, they created the crop for the loosh, and it's just sounded like sci-fi stuff. It sounded very culty. I've heard various different cult kind of people communicate before. It is because they communicate with entities. You know, they claim to channel these entities, and it's interesting how it really sounds like something that was channeled by an entity, at least from other things that I've read, where, you know, people are claiming to have channeled something from an entity. Just very robotic and like otherworldly. And when people are explaining the Loosh farm as people were created so that these entities can farm Loosh, like, that's not how it's worded in the book. Very convoluted, very hard to penetrate, very difficult to understand. Anyway, moving forward, some people are saying that, like, love also creates Loosh. You know, either fear, emotional distress, or love. And then this is used to fuel the Matrix or something. It's just like the more you get into it, the more questions I have. But something I was thinking, assuming that it's not generated by love, because that makes it a lot more difficult. But if it's only a matter of fear, and I would say things kind of relating to your ego, well, then that can give you a path as a spiritual seeker to basically turn away from the self, and it gives you a path of spiritual development. Because, you know, I'm always telling these people, like, you know, good luck fighting God and good luck fighting this. I mean, it lays out this like hopeless system where I don't really buy anything that anybody says about it. You know, they say like you have to figure out how to escape the light when you die. If this system is really as hopeless as you're making it sound, I mean, then it just kind of sounds like, you know, this would just be the way that things are, and you're probably not going to be able to escape from the light, and it probably just is what it is. You know, it would mean that life exists inside of this soul trap where we're ruled over by malevolent entities, and that is a very scary thing to meditate on. You know, it's like, yeah, there is like a god class above us, or things that have spiritual power over us, and ultimately they don't love us and they're not our friends, and we live inside of this generated matrix to where our emotions are farmed. But that would really point to me, what that would really point to, in my opinion, just thinking that Loosh comes from like human emotions of distress and anger, and it sounds to me like the first step would be mastering your emotions, you know, like shrinking your emotions and gaining spiritual control, which would, you know, be this Eastern path or the mystic path. And as I've pointed out in my earlier videos, you know, you can look at the path of sainthood, which is about semen retention, but also other things. And I've been going down this rabbit hole for at least the last month on how there's a lot of overlap between Christianity and Eastern spirituality. You look at the teachings of Christ, very similar. Like, you know, I compare, like, my go-tos lately is Matthew 7, the 8 Beatitudes, and then, you know, the 10 Commandments. There's obviously a lot more than that, but, you know, if you just left those three things open in a tab, in 3 different tabs, you just leave that open at all times, maybe skim over that once a day, that can give you a pretty good idea of a system. And then, you know, you compare that to like the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, and I can honestly tell you my first impression is that The Christian version is just way more clear. You know, it's way more clear, less open to interpretation. I mean, I feel like they're very similar systems, but I felt like some of the eightfold path was like kind of redundant and confusing. And, you know, maybe that makes me sound stupid, but I'm just saying, like, people try to reason around the Ten Commandments, but it doesn't work. You know, the Ten Commandments are very straightforward. I feel like Matthew 7 should be pretty straightforward. That's an overview of Matthew 7, which I've gone over a lot, is just treat others the way you want to be treated. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Pick the log out of your own eye before you address the speck in your brother's eye. Not everybody who calls out, Lord, 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 shall be saved. The path is narrow. The path to damnation is wide. And you will know them by their fruits. Oh my gosh, I find that so important. Like the wolves in sheep's clothing. They're talking about like predatory people in the church, predatory cult leaders. You will know them by their fruits. So one of the main ways I interpret that is when somebody is trying to be a teacher to you, like a spiritual guide, and they don't have their life together. You know, they swear and they demean and they belittle people. And I mean, the first things you should be looking for, because the context, what I always point out about Matthew 7 is context. It's all one after the other, you know. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Log out of your own eye before you pick the speck out of your brother's eye. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Right? It's all one after the other in context together. So what comes next? Not everyone who says to me, Lord, 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 will be saved. When the day comes, I'll say, turn away from me, I never knew you. Well, what's the context? What came before? He said that. How you treat people. How you judge people. And now relating this back to the soul trap, people talk about the life review. People are claiming in these near-death experiences to have this life review. And I've heard it from a lot of different angles. You know, some people just straight up say they've experienced part of this life review where they're told the focus is on like how they hurt other people in their life, which is very relevant to Matthew 7. You know, these people who are judging you, and then of course people try to claim that they're evil, or like you shouldn't trust these people, or they're going to put you through some sort of a guilt trip, and you're supposed to be like, hey, look over there, and then you run. You know, you try to run away from this interview with the people who like put you through a guilt trip about how you treated people in your life. That aside, the thing that makes me think some of these near-death experiences sound very realistic is that the harshest thing they're judging you on is how you made other people feel. Matthew 7 is all about treating people well. My idea is that, you know, in context with Matthew 7, the people who are not going to be saved, not everyone who says, Lord, 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 you know, turn away from me, I never knew you. For the path is narrow. He's basically talking about normies, you guys. Like the people on my channel that were always just constantly kind of like, man, why are people like this? Like, why are supposedly regular people so mean? Like, why do they just seem to take pleasure in being horrible to people? Because the path is narrow to salvation. Most people aren't going to make it because you will know them by their fruits. You know these people by their fruits, normies, and they are the norm. They are in abundance because the path is narrow. Matthew 7 is like everything. I'm going to be slowly looking for like the next staples, but you know, 10 commandments, absolute, just meat and potatoes, basics, you know, don't commit adultery, don't steal, yada yada yada. Look it up, you don't know them. Matthew 7, we just went over it. And then the 8 Beatitudes. Still got to memorize this, but blessed are the peacekeepers, blessed are those who suffer for the sake of righteousness. And then, you know, it ends with some variation of for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are the peacekeepers, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are those who are poor of spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who suffer for righteousness' sake. I feel like that's highly relevant to somebody like me who has a channel that tries to help people through Christ and gets harassed and stalked. I feel like I can say on some level that there has been a little hint of me being persecuted for the sake of righteousness, but I'm still out here trying to figure it out, guys. I still got a lot of work to go. I really don't want to swear. I know that's a small thing, and people just say like, "Oh, dude, don't worry about it." Like, swearing shows storytelling or character or whatever. I really don't want to swear as much. It's a bad habit. It's weird to me how I don't swear in my videos, but then in a live stream I tell a story and I just have a mouth like a sailor. But anyway, so the point I was trying to unpack, guys, is that the teachings of Christ, and as an extension, the teachings in the New Testament. Somebody was saying something in John 1, 1 John the other day, that I just really thought was amazing. It was related to pornography. It was relating to turn away from lewd images. I don't remember exactly what it was, but not just the Gospels. There will be some people who are like, "Oh, I only like the Gospels. I think that maybe Paul was a deceiver or something." No, the Gospels are obviously great. The Beatitudes in Matthew 7 are Gospels, but as an extension, the rest of the New Testament, and then, you go to the Old Testament and you got Psalms and Proverbs. But the point I'm trying to get to is, in terms of wisdom, how to be, how to act, you can find these same teachings in Buddhism, in Hinduism, Taoism, Neoplatonism, and then, people get all wrapped up in, well, yeah, it's because the Bible stole it. Or, yeah, it's because, Jesus was made up, and it's some weird combination of Zoroastrianism and blah, 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 which I obviously don't believe. And a lot of times what you find is that it ends up being the other way around. But that doesn't matter. The point is right here that the teachings are the same. The big difference, or some of the big differences, because there's obviously differences too, but it's where does the worship go? Hindus worship a bunch of different things. They're talking about how Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu is supposedly the proton, the neutron, and the electron, and you just kind of worship all these different aspects of life. To me, it just sounds... I'm trying to not sound racist or offensive when I say this. It sounds very primitive when I think of the West and what the West has achieved, and just how it just seems and this is what so many Gnostics and weird occult people just seem to be missing, man, is the Western destiny, manifest destiny of the West, the Faustian spirit, the absolute just domination of Western peoples under the church, originally the Catholic Church, and then Orthodoxy. And Orthodoxy and the Catholics are arguing for who has the best church, or who has the original church. And then then people who are Protestants argue that, well, what about the Renaissance that came right after the Protestant Reformation? So, then they'll try to make that argument. But I would argue then, okay, well, that's when we had the Freemasons and the Royal Society and the secret societies started plotting how to enslave all of us, and then we got pushed through the Industrial Revolution, which took the power away from most people and pushed us into these factories and created the slave society. I mean, it's weird to cite Jesus and philosophers and religions and then cite Uncle Ted and then cite Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, but he hit the nail on the head with the Industrial Revolution. It's not like he's the only person who ever talked down on the Industrial Revolution. So we're a little bit all over the place here. But, the point I was trying to make is I'm just trying to point out how the technique of mysticism. Now, I believe that not all people are meant to be mystics. From the point of the Catholic Church, just looking at like, because everybody wants to have sex. Like when people look at like the Catholic view of sex, they're like, that's nutty, that's insane, like you're gonna go insane. And you know, there's some Christian teachers out there who think that Catholics have a bizarre, estranged view of sex that's causing men to torture themselves with chastity. But basically, you're either meant to have a family, being married, obviously, because there's not supposed to be sex out of marriage, that's fornication. You're either going to be a family man, which you're probably not going to be a mystic, or you're going to be celibate, which is a essential part of mysticism. So the mystic path, and then you could even say that see, because I was confused. It's like, man, when you say that Loosh is produced by either love or suffering, well, that makes it really difficult. But then you start thinking about, okay, but what if you're a mystic and then you're not loving anyone, right? Because you don't have a wife. I mean, maybe it's just like romantic love. You know, maybe they feed off of this romantic love, or they feed off of your love for like children and a wife. Like maybe they're, let's just say, because you know this is just all kind of like ruminating, I'm not really teaching any concrete facts here, but let's just say that well, we're not coming to like a grand conclusion that's supposed to be teaching facts. I mean, I am spitting facts along the way, but anyway, I digress. Let's just say that it's like familial love that produces Loosh, because you know ultimately you want to love everybody, but just being real, even if you are this mystic who has love for everyone, as is taught in the Bible and really is also taught in the East in terms of just being kind, because basically love means to be kind. You know, you show that you follow me by your love for one another. But people point out the different translations of love that it's based off of. You know, it's supposed to be like a brotherly kindness love. Basically, we hear love as Westerners and we think about this like romance. That's why sometimes I feel like it just sounds so cheesy to people. Why people like struggle to become Christian, because it sounds ooey gooey and weird to them. Like you're all hung up on the term love. You really got to unwesternize your concept of love. It's just being kindness. You know, in the East they talk about kindness, loving kindness. Same. The more time that goes on, the more I'm like, wow, so much of it is just same. But the point is, guys, is like, in terms of Loosh, because this is what all of this shotgun brainstorming is trying to lead to. In terms of Loosh, the easy thing to think of is the fear, the base emotions. You shut those down. You stop reacting. You stop hurting. You stop lashing out. You stop putting yourself in situations. You know, you stop going to the clubs and you stop going to the bars and you stop putting yourself out there to where these things are going to happen. Now, obviously, when you're developed enough, you will be able to, if you want. Like, you can go be out in the world and have enough self-control and development to not have Loosh producing reactions to these kind of things. But I'm trying to play this game here. It's like, okay, let's say that there are some sort of Loosh farmers out there, and it could be a parallel system. I saw this speculated in the comments as well. It's like, well, you know, these things that feed off of Loosh, who's to say that, you know, they're the end-all, be-all, and they're in charge, and, like, they're the top dogs of existence. It's just some sort of, like, a parallel thing, but now saying that they created us, that's definitely Gnostic. Because then you're saying, it's like, okay, they're, like, above us in this way, and they created us, but there's something beyond them that's truly deserving of worship. Well, now you're just straight up describing the demiurge of Gnosticism. But, and, you know, as a Christian, I would say, like, well, I definitely see that there could be parasitic entities. I've even had the experience. I told you guys about the black orb that I saw in my room. I was having a dream that I was working at a coffee shop. And, like, everybody was just being really horrible to me in the dream. You know, like people were like making that like they were mocking me, gaslighting me. You know, the customers were gaslighting me and mocking me. It's like, well, you're an idiot. Do you even know how to do your job? And then my boss would come out and berate me. Like, it was like I was in some weird demonic trap where everybody in the dream was mocking me. And I woke up and I saw this black orb in my room. And I've seen this kind of thing before, but I got a really good glimpse of it. Like, I'm used to it just disappearing, like as soon as my eyes open. I mean, I've seen other paranormal things and they disappear as soon as I wake up. But this thing just stayed there floating. It had this kind of like floating thing. I don't know if you guys can see this. This is my like slam medicine ball thing. Will come into the light. So it was shaped like this, but it was bigger. Like, it was bigger than this. If that's some sort of a reference, like maybe 4 or 5 times bigger. It was pretty big. Like that drum case that rug is on top of here. You know, oh, that's the wrong shape, but it was probably about that big. But the idea is like, okay, so I was having a dream where I was being gaslit, which is, you know, I've dealt with that my entire life. I've dealt with people treating me like crap my entire life. I was having a dream where I was being treated like crap. And then I wake up and I see this black orb that looks like it has tentacles coming out of it. I rapped about it in my song, Right From Wrong. The orb, the black orb and its tentacles. This thing, I believe, was causing me to have a stressful dream. And then it was feeding off of my fear or my emotions. So, but do I think that that thing is like behind the creation of existence? No, it's like some piece of shit cockroach astral entity, you know? So, I think I've done a pretty good job kind of summarizing my thoughts about that. If you don't see where this is leading, I could keep going on and on, but basically, spiritual, contemplative, mystic practice is how you would learn to shut yourself down, to deny the parasites of their loosh. But you know, I was all excited to give the explanation, and then right before I turned on the camera, I was like, oh, wait a minute. But people in the comments are saying that, like, unconditional love also creates loosh. Well, then you just don't get married and you don't have a family. So that's a very strange thing to think of. You know, the Bible doesn't speak lowly about people who have families, but if you think about it, you know, Paul says, if you can go without having a wife, you'd be better off. And there's people who have given Paul crap, because it's like, you know, he says that the end is so close that if you're unmarried, you should stay unmarried. People have rightly pointed out that there's this sense of urgency in Christianity, like the end is coming. And, you know, a lot of atheists and people of different faiths kind of mock Christians for it. It's like, you've said the end is coming for a very, very, very long time. That's where the whole post-millennialism, amillennialism, the idea that the 1,000-year reign of Christ already happened somehow. I feel like the post-millennial, as far as I know, or kind of, there's this new brand of kind of like conspiracy theories on YouTube where they make a big deal out of it. It's like, whoa, the 1,000-year reign of Christ already happened, when really that's just kind of like post-millennialism, which isn't really it's a theological view that has existed for a long time, and now you got these people kind of like dude broing it, making videos about it. But what I'm getting is that they think that, you know, Christ really returned in this dramatic fashion and had this 1,000-year reign in a very public way that maybe has been covered up. And amillennialism, which is actually what the Catholic Church teaches, is that the 1,000-year reign of Christ was just like from the destruction of the temple to about the Protestant Reformation. So the idea is that, you know, the Enlightenment, the Protestant Reformation, this is when the beast was set free from the pit to deceive the world. And I definitely would look at like the Freemasons and the Illuminati and the secret societies as like the servants of the beast and its illusion. So, okay. Yeah, so I was wrapping up the segment about how to shut down to stop producing Loosh, which would be through spiritual practice, and if it is also caused by unconditional love, which really you should have for everyone, but you're not going to love anybody like you love your children and your wife. So it would be a mystic path. I mean, it's just straight up the spiritual path, the path of the mystic. That is how you would stop producing Loosh. Now, I wanted to move on to out-of-body experience and just what some of my thoughts on Robert Monroe, and like, okay, so why should we not hang off of every single word of this CIA agent? I mean, does that really need to be explained? I mean, are people really like, man, why is he not? I mean, dude, you just got BTFO'd by Robert Monroe, dude. Like, that's it. Game over. A CIA agent, like, told you everything about how the world is. I mean, that's it. Christianity's destroyed, dude. I find it really ironic, and I just left a comment saying this. You know, these people, because I'm finding all these people, there's basically a cult. There's like a cult of Robert Monroe. It's very similar to Scientology, and as I've said before, very similar to Gnosticism. Because, you know, Scientology says something about aliens feeding off of emotions somehow. These people are all just, in passing, they talk about Christians, like, oh, you know, they have these weird dogmatic views that are very unenlightened and fictional. They write off Christianity in passing like it's nothing. When they don't seem to realize, you know, Robert Monroe is your John Smith, you know, instead of pulling the tablets out of the hat. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy, guys. I just got back from my out-of-body experience, and, you know, trust me, bro, like, I came across something in my out-of-body experience that told me exactly how everything is. So I'd say there's two possibilities here. Either the CIA used this guy to tell this story because they knew that people would believe it, and clearly they did. So it's just a simple opportunity for the CIA to create some worldview that combats Christianity. And, I mean, why would I have a reason to believe that? Well, look how effective it is. And then the other thing could be that he really is having these out-of-body experiences, which I believe in. Like, you know, I'm in a very strange place, you guys, where I have mixed feelings about it. Like, do I think an out-of-body experience is witchcraft? Do I think that, like, seeking to have an out-of-body experience is witchcraft? Especially if it's in, like, a natural means. Because, you know, I do think that it would be bad to take ayahuasca or acid or shrooms for me right now. Like, me, as a Catholic now, I definitely shouldn't be taking drugs. But then I think, like, well, why shouldn't I be taking drugs? Because you're opening yourself up to these things. But you might be opening yourself up to these things in the same way by, you know, seeking to do astral projection. So I'm in a strange place, you guys, where it's like, I'm curious. I'm doing the Hemi-sync tapes. You know, I'm almost to the end of wave 2, and so far I find it pretty harmless. It's just like a very effective system of meditation. I feel like I'm getting some spiritual growth, you know? There is clearly some good research and funding put into this, you know? Sometimes the CIA can be very helpful. But So there's the possibility that the CIA just wanted this guy to lie to produce smut so people would believe something horrendous. Or he really did contact these entities and they're lying to him. And this seems to be this big disconnect for like people who are in cults and the occult and spiritual stuff is like, you think that Christianity is some sort of a lie, but you don't think that like whatever entity that Robert Monroe ran into could be lying to him, or could just be giving him like a manipulation of the truth. Like the thing he's talking to could just be what's called an astral nasty. I remember hearing about that a long time ago when I was in the occult. Astral nasties, I mean, that's kind of what I would identify that black orb as. That black orb is just an astral nasty, It's just like, you're going to say this thing is God? You're going to say this thing designed the universe and designed humanity? And like, no, bro. It's like the equivalent of some thug on the street, like with a shit-eating grin, smoking a cigarette, who wants to try to rip you off. Like, you don't think you can get scammed in the astral plane? And that's exactly what they want. I'm almost wondering if, like, that's what hell is like you're just lost in the astral plane. You're in the spiritual realm separated from God. I'm trying to come up with all these kind of tricks to, like, define what hell is. It's like, well, there's gnashing of teeth. There's weeping and gnashing of teeth here on earth. So, maybe, like, purgatory is just getting reincarnated here on earth. And then maybe hell is when you're so far down the chain of reincarnation and your soul is so lost that it's basically hopeless and you're going to be stuck here forever. Now, I'm not trying to be heretical. Clearly my thoughts are going to some weird places lately, but, also, the outer darkness, a place for your soul separated from God, that could really sound like it's the astral realm. So when you travel out of your body and you have an out-of-body experience, you could be in this outer darkness. That's what Christ, one of his descriptions of hell, just outside of the kingdom of heaven, the outer darkness, and it's just this kind of spiritual void where there's no reason you should believe anything these things tell you. And I'm not just pulling this out of my butt, okay? If you're here and you're like a spiritual occultist, truth seeker, new ager, I know this like the back of my hand. You're always looking for reasons to write off Christians and everything they say. It's like, oh, you're just a Christian, you're coping, you're trying so hard not to see it. Like, dude, like, cope. But no, man, and it's just sad. You can't stop and think, wow, a lot of people believed in Jesus. Like, Jesus changed the world. Cult leaders have come and gone. We know about cults. There are other cults. There are other spiritual things. And just recently studying Jacques Vallée, like a couple of weeks ago, he writes about UFOs and speculates about, aliens and UFOs maybe being some sort of a local thing in another dimension. And again, the astral realm is another dimension, and demons would be in another dimension. So it's weird because Jacques Vallée is like from NASA, and he said some things that I'm disgusted by, like that the Marian apparitions, the miracle of Fatima, like that was some sort of an alien deception. That's absolutely disgusting to me. And people in the comments are like, oh, well, that's much more, that's much more viable. That makes a lot more sense than it being like a real miracle from God, from Mary. I mean, it's just disgusting, man. Like the way that you consider these outlandish things. Okay, you're open-minded to an extent. You consider these spiritual things, but all across the board, you just write Christianity off, even though Christ has had a bigger impact on the world than anything. And then you're like, oh yeah, well, most people are sheep and most people are deceived. Right. But then people will turn around and say, oh, well, most people these days are atheists because people are waking up from the brainwashing. So Christians are getting it from both angles, where you have the completely spiritually dead atheists, and then, the reality is that they still don't outnumber religious people, but you got the atheists saying that, like, Christians are idiots, and then you got the New Agers saying that Christians are idiots. And I know that New Agers and spiritual people, you don't have the most positive view of atheists either. And this is something that you should kind of consider. But yeah, so I'm not trying to be like a Christian coper, guys. Like, I was into the occult. I've had some paranormal experiences, and I've recently had some paranormal experiences as a Christian too. And I would identify this parasitic orb that I believe was manipulating my dreams somehow so it could feed off of my emotions as some sort of an astral nasty. I don't think it's connected to creation, it's a low level thing. Now, it sounds like it can manipulate my dreams somehow, or maybe I was just having a bad dream and it sensed it was nearby and it came and took advantage of it. But so there's that. There's the idea of just the astral nasty that, and then you have to think, if you contact these things in an out of body experience, I mean, why wouldn't they want to deceive you? What leads you to believe that it's not possible for them to lie to you or to manipulate you? And it's like, well, what reason would they have? Because they're making you think that they're so powerful. And I know it's not a foreign concept for spiritual people who are questionable of Christianity. I mean, you're considering that God is a liar. It's like, okay, well, God existed, or Yahweh existed, but it's a demiurge, and it lied to people. It convinced them that it's God. Or he really was God, and that's why there's these ancient books that compile all this history and knowledge from God. And maybe the spiritual thing that you ran into was a liar. Because the concept of some sort of an entity lying. You would say that, like, Jesus was a liar, or that Yahweh was a liar. Maybe the stupid, ghetto, low-leveled astral nasty that you ran into in the astral realm was a liar. So, finishing this rant up is just me saying that I might be seeking an out-of-body experience as a Christian. And because I'm trying to think about this logically, and, like, is this black magic? Is this something I shouldn't be doing? By the way, it's 3:33 right now as I say that. That could be some sort of a sign that I shouldn't do that, but I'm just really treading the waters here, guys. Like, I'm gonna do the Hemi-sync tapes until I feel that I should stop. So far, I just think it's going to help expand my ability to focus and contemplate. And I think when I go back to my cloud of unknowing contemplation, it's really just helping me. It's helping me reach these different states of consciousness. But when it comes to out-of-body experience, I believe that I will be putting myself in a place that's maybe not a good place. Like, maybe the astral realm just isn't a good place. And similar to what people say when they smoke DMT, there's all kinds of people claiming they've talked to clockwork elves and strange spiritual entities on DMT. I think maybe out-of-body projection is just another method to contact that realm. And I was trying to reason and explain, like, why you shouldn't just think I'm a Christian, like, bending over backwards to protect my faith and hiding from the reality that's right in my face. I don't think the reality is right in my face. I think I have every reason to believe, and I guess maybe I'm not so convinced right now that I've explained myself properly or that it's convincing, but maybe it is. I think maybe it is. I watch my videos back and I'm like, you know what, that was actually pretty convincing. That was more convincing than I thought. In light of, like, looking at people's DMT experiences, talking to the clockwork elves, thinking about people's out-of-body experiences, thinking about these things that Robert Monroe learned from whatever this entity was, thinking about Aleister Crowley and Ayahuasca. It's not too much of a stretch to say that the astral realm is a dark place filled with dark entities that are looking to mislead you. I mean, sometimes people say they're just straight up attacked by things in the astral realm. Now, I guess you could say, oh, well, not everything in the astral realm is bad. But I think what happens is these people who don't have an anchor, they're searching, they're looking for truth, they're desperate for truth. You know, people who get manipulated by cult leaders are desperate for truth. And, you know, it's one thing to get manipulated by a human who has a lot of charisma and sounds incredibly intelligent, and they usually are intelligent in certain ways, but not in regards to the truth. They're manipulating you or feeding you half-truths. Well, I mean, if you can get manipulated by a human with charisma, who's to say you can't get manipulated? Like, wow, a real spiritual entity. Logically, whatever this thing tells me has to be the truth. So, yeah, when it comes to Robert Monroe, I like the techniques in the Hemi-sync so far. I'm somebody who has not shied away from hypnosis tapes and other things in the past as a Christian, and I'm just finding that this is a very advanced system, and I'm not afraid of it, and I think it's benefiting me. But when it comes to his teachings about the Loosh farm, which clearly I'm just now realizing, which inspired this video, is that that's where Loosh came from. It comes from Robert Monroe. It's like this weird coincidence, because I was just checking out Hemi-sync, and oh, that's it. Project Gateway, Robert Monroe, Monroe Institute, CIA. When he was astral traveling, he wrote about it in his books. He ran into these. He ran into this entity that told him about how the world is a Loosh farm. Either the CIA put this guy up to lying for nefarious reasons. I mean, there's CIA connections to other cults, and this guy basically is a cult leader. That's basically what ended up happening, whether that was his intention or not. But if you think about it, entities usually are cult leaders. I mean, the entity that Robert Smith, that's the singer of The Cure, John Smith, the entity that John Smith of Mormonism was talking to, I mean, it's like, was John Smith the cult leader, or was the entity that he was channeling the cult leader? So yeah, like, I have every reason not to trust random entities. Now, yes, I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible. I trust and love Jesus Christ. You got me red-handed. The amount of bias that comes from these New Age people, like, you will just hang off of everything. You will dive headfirst into this spiritual prison of the astral realm, which I'm starting to think, this thing could be connected to hell somehow. Like, this is like where it seems like demons are. He's talking about lost souls. Apparently in the third Monroe book, he goes and tries to help lost souls find their way or something. I mean, whatever the astral realm is, there's a lot of nasty stuff in there. And I'm at this place where it's like, I think maybe it's okay for me to go there, but it sounds like it's really risky. And you're kind of in this gray area where it's like, well, I'm not taking the drugs. And some people have out-of-body experiences on accident. But you're playing with fire. You're trying to do something that you're probably just not going to run into anything in there. And you might, maybe the way an entity would approach me is it tries to appear holy. And then it tries to tell me something to deceive me. But whatever any entity tells me, I would be very skeptical about. I wouldn't be diving into the out-of-body experience looking to believe anything that any spiritual entity tells me. Because just think about it. Try to think of it objectively. Why should you hang off of every word of whatever some entity you come across in the astral realm tells you? So that's a 50-minute video, and I think anything beyond that would be redundant. And that's my thoughts, guys. The Loosh farm revisited. I don't believe in it, but I do believe there are parasitic entities. The Loosh farm is, it sounds to me like some sort of a astral nasties version of we was kangs. Some astral nasty was like, yeah, we created everything, and we created you to be slaves so we could feed off of you. And when in reality, it's some dirty parasite that didn't create anything. It's just forever wandering, you know, the outer dimension or whatever the hell, astral realm, whatever you want to call it. And it just feeds off of people's emotions. Like, yeah, I've always believed in these kind of parasites or demons. Like, you could say they are demons, or maybe there's even a difference between an astral nasty and a demon's more powerful. But a demon would also feed off of people's emotions. I've been going with the idea for a long time that you know, demons are behind like narcissism and psychopathy and mental illness. That's what the church believed before psychology. And I've basically addressed already that I think that's correct. So anyway, guys, some food for thought. That's it. Hope you enjoyed. God bless.